There's nothing deadly about slow zombies. The zombies weren't the worst part of the zombie apocalypse. The thing was, they were slow. A toddler could crawl faster than these zombies could walk. No, the worst part was all the nutjobs who believed that this was the end times. They went around killing anyone they thought was infected, including tons of people who weren't. That's how my dad died. He had a stroke. He was outside in our driveway. He could barely move. And the zombie patrol saw him and shot him. No hesitation. If they had just called a fucking ambulance, my father would still be alive. My mother took it the hardest. She had to come home to find him like that in the driveway. After that, for weeks, she was practically catatonic. A zombie was bumping into our front door, and she didn't even think. She just answered. By the time I heard the screaming, it was too late. I managed to kill the zombie, but she'd been bit. I know it was stupid, but I had just lost my dad. I didn't want to lose my mom, too. I locked her in our basement. For weeks, I would check the news praying for the government to find a cure. Months passed. Almost all the zombies in the country were killed. New waves would come. The zombies would be exterminated. It went on like that for months. Then my prayers were answered. The government released a message on TV saying there was a cure. They had set up a hospital site. Wrangling my mother was easy. I tied her up in the car and left. Once at the hospital, soldiers helped lead my mother to an exam room. I wanted to go in with her, to be the first thing she saw when she came back to life. But a doctor sat me down outside the room. The reason these waves keep happening is because people are hiding their relatives, hoping for a cure. Eventually, they get sick too and spread the infection. Don't be alarmed. There is no cure. 2 gunshots sounded from inside the exam room. The only way to end this pandemic is to kill all the infected. I'm sorry. Your mother died a long time ago. We just finished it. Rage seethed in me. Let me say goodbye. Son, she's gone. You fucking lied to get me here. You killed my mom. Let me say goodbye. The doctor nodded, and a soldier opened the door for me. I entered. I was alone. I decided I didn't want to be part of the living anymore. All of them were liars and murderers. I stuck my finger in my mom's blood and rubbed it on my gums. I needed to bite that asshole doctor quickly before I slowed down. But something was different. The infection had mutated. I felt myself getting stronger. The last thing I remember is sprinting at top speed and ripping that lying doctor to pieces. Not a zombie. The world is at its final moments, and it turns out the human race had predicted it all along. The zombie apocalypse is here, and the world is in a state of sheer terror and panic. The world's military is already amassing their strength to go out in a final blaze of glory. But who will be the victor in this showdown between the living and the dead? Some of us might not live long enough to find out. The cities are being evacuated, and most residents are in a frantic state as they try to escape before the government walls in the zombies. Anne was terrified as she was driving her car through the streets, infested with zombies and people fleeing. The safe zone she was assigned to was not far outside of the city, but the roads were treacherous. As she swerves to avoid driving straight into an 18-wheeler, she veers off the road and crashes into a ditch. The impact throws Anne out through her windshield. Luckily for her, there are no zombies around, because she would have been an easy meal due to the injury she suffered. Her right foot had nearly twisted off her ankle. A piece of fractured bone was poking out from under her skin near the left elbow. The jarring force of the collision had made her bite through her tongue and shatter her teeth. Her face was swollen as well from hitting the ground. The car was totaled, and she needs medical attention fast before she bleeds out. She knows there's a gas station that isn't too far away, so she begins the agonizing limp all the way there. She was right. The gas station was filled with people running around and gathering supplies as they tried to create some kind of fort against the zombies. She tried waving to them with her good hand, and a few of them came running towards her with their weapons drawn. Anne had not realized how horrible she looked, and the people had thought she was a freshly infected zombie still undergoing transformation. Her mouth and lips were badly swollen, so she couldn't talk or explain to them that she wasn't a zombie and desperately needed their help. They aim their guns. She fears this is the end until someone calms them down. A few of them lower their weapons when they realize that she didn't look like a typical zombie. Relief floods her eyes for a split moment before they went dead as a bullet exits her forehead, spraying her skull and brains everywhere. The men drag her lifeless body and dump it in a ditch with the other zombies they had killed. They all agree that it was better to be safe than sorry. The Zombie Guidebook. Number 1. Try your best to find a safe haven, preferably a location on high ground, and has at least 2 escape routes. High-rise apartment buildings are unsafe as they are too crowded and your chances of an encounter are increased. Number 2. Stock up on as many essential items as possible: food, helmet, guns. Number 3. Do not panic when you encounter one of them. They are technically human too. Number 4. Hide out of sight. They are able to see and smell you, and once you are spotted, they will congregate in packs and hunt at a high speed. Number 5. If you are spotted, fight back. They tend to aim for your neck and head, so your helmet comes in handy. Utilize your gun to shoot them in the chest or the head if you are able to. Ensure that they are dead. Number 6. Loot the corpse. Take any weapons they have, such as spears, axes, bayonets, etc. Remove their clothes. Extract their brain as soon as possible. They are tasty while they are still warm. Number 7. When safety permits, search for human survivors. They are likely to be taking refuge in the North Forest. Approach as soon as possible. The children's brains are the tastiest. The Man in the Country. It's been a week since the world went tits up. No more mini-malls, no more restaurants, no more Saturday night games with the buddies and some brew, no more Sunday peaceful drives cruising with the family. Hell, no more family. It's crazy to think this time last Sunday I got a kiss from my wife, telling me her and the kids were going out shopping for a present for her mother's birthday, and that they would return shortly. I sit here depressed, as I am consumed with the silence that now surrounds me. No more laughter and sounds of life and happiness. Just faint sounds of an eerie hollow wind moving its way through the halls, and the moans from the dead. Oh, the fucking dead. I hear them beginning to mass outside on the road, just over the walls of my enclosed front yard. Their constant clamoring of the front gate keeps me awake most nights. I'm well stocked for food and water, and as I said earlier, my entire home and its grounds are surrounded by a 10-foot brick wall. Plus, my home sits on top a hill overlooking the city and the countryside, which explains why it's taken till now for them to finally start massing a week out. The power went out yesterday. It sure didn't take long for the world to revert back to the dark ages. Thankfully, I have a generator pumping that's keeping me in modern spirits. Cell phone still works. For now, anyways. I'm not holding my breath for much longer, though. I keep trying to call my wife, even though I know she won't pick up. You see, after my wife told me that she and the kids were leaving that day, I had went back to sleep. I was tired from the night before, when I had to go into work on my day off, so I was dead beat. Plus, it had been a long, grueling week to begin with. The thing is, I must have been more tired than I realized, because when I was awoken by the phone ringing, I looked outside my bedroom window, and it was beginning to turn dusk. I saw plumes of smoke scattered across the city, fading up into the sunset. I clicked the talk button and said hello, and it was my wife, sounding in a panic, sounding short of breath. The kids near her sounding frightened. Her words were incoherent, like a blender set on high. She was frantically saying that her and the kids were running from a group of people trying to attack them, and that almost everyone that was out in the city was acting like a crazed animal, attacking people left and right. She said that she thought they had lost them, and that her and the kids were making their way through the parking lot of the mall, and they were going there to seek shelter, because that was the closest location that the emergency response message on the radio told people to go to. She was starting to sound relieved the closer they got to the front doors of the mall. I told her to run. Don't waste another second. I don't care how close they were. Just hurry and get inside. As the word yes began to leave her lips like an empty promise, I heard the children scream. Then my wife began to scream. The phone fell. I could hear my children slowly being devoured by a screaming, ravenous horde. The mashing of teeth and ripping of flesh permeated the speaker of the phone. I could hear my wife screaming, begging for the lives of our babies. Then I heard a shift in the moans, and my wife screaming, "No! No! Get away from me!" Then her screams fading away into the distance. I fell to my knees, phone falling to my side, not believing what I just heard. My babies, the future of this family, savagely ripped from this world before they could even make their way through it. And my wife, my poor wife, did she survive? Did she run off and make it to the mall? These are the questions I ask myself as I sit here, foolishly trying to call my wife's cell phone for the past week. The dead. Jesus, the dead. They're driving me mad. Their constant moaning and clawing at the walls has me at my breaking point. They're getting louder as more of the dead leave the city and make their way out to the countryside. When it's dark tonight, I'll make my way to the front wall and see how bad it's getting. As the sun faded past the horizon, I waited for a few moments, hand on the handle of my front door. As darkness enveloped the countryside, I opened the door and made my way to the wall under the light of the stars. I clung to the side of the wall, trying to stay in the shadows so that the dead that were trying to get through the front gate couldn't see me. I got to the front wall, where I had a small maintenance ladder propped up against its base. I quietly unfolded it and placed it up against the wall. I gently and most hesitantly climbed the rungs. When I reached the top, I cautiously peeked over the top of the wall, where I spotted about 20, maybe 30 dead fuckers just bumping into each other and up against the wall. I looked to my right down the dirt road and saw more shambling their way towards me. I urgently thought, I have to take care of these 20 or 30 meatheads before the rest show up, or I'll be in real trouble. Luckily, I'm prepared to handle such a matter. I got down from the ladder and made my way back to the house. Once inside, I retrieved the nickel-plated 12-gauge from the cabinet in my study and a box of shells. I quickly went back outside, climbed the ladder once again, and started dispersing of the dead. Pump after pump, I mowed those bastards down. Layers of the dead littered my front gate, which was perfect, I thought. That'll slow down the bastards that are coming up the road. As I started making my way back towards the house, I could hear a ringing. I stopped in my tracks, stunned, not knowing what I was doing at the moment. What the hell is that? I thought for a second, then quickly realized it's the phone. I rushed into the house, reaching for my cell phone. I answered it, and it was my love. My beautiful wife was speaking to me from the other side. It was a static, garbled mess, but I made out Moll and safe. I yelled at her to stay there, that I loved her more than anything else in this entire world, and that I was coming for her. I packed a small bag of supplies and grabbed the shotgun. I'm coming for you, Brandy. Hold on. Zombie cage. That sexy Irish bastard locked me in a room full of zombies. Talk about having shit-tasted men. Am I right, ladies? I should have known he was a serial killer. A well-adjusted, good-looking guy who used soap, had all of his own teeth, and was actually interested in me. Of course it was too good to be fucking true. So here was the rub. I was trapped in a cramped room with 8 zombies. 4 male, 3 female, 1 too decomposed to tell. And it was gonna be a long time before anybody came looking for me. Oh sure, I told my friends and family where I was going, but since the outbreak, the police had been overwhelmed. Although we'd clawed back some semblance of a functional society, a missing person case would be low on their priorities list. Containing the outbreak was a huge resource drain, which meant the major cities got a little Mad Maxy. Serial killers popped up all over the place. Psychiatrists even had an explanation for the phenomena. Something about a trauma response to the end of the world. And now, I'd gone home with one of the lunatics. Fan-fucking-tastic. This was marginally worse than my dinner date with Jerry. Luckily, as everyone knows, zombies are a massively shit way to kill someone. Oh sure, in the early days they were a threat, but now they had rigor mortis and crumbling limbs and the hand-eye coordination of a baby swallow. I estimated the room to be roughly 20 square feet. It would probably take the zombies an hour to make it from one end to the other. But I guess that was part of the appeal, right? My death would be an agonizing, drawn-out affair. From behind a thick sheet of glass, my tormentor could watch my gradual descent into madness. I lay down in the corner and rested my eyes. When I opened them again, the zombies were halfway towards me. I stared at the ceiling until they were almost close enough to take a bite, then sidestepped them, steering well clear of their mouths, which snapped open and shut. Then I curled up against the opposite wall. It wouldn't be too difficult to stay alive. Eventually, somebody would come find me, and for a moment, I let myself believe things would be okay. But then my captor appeared behind the glass and tapped a button in the wall. His voice came out of a speaker in the ceiling. "Congrats. You've survived a full hour. I'm impressed." "Only an hour," I replied. "Shit, I could do this all day." He smiled. "Really?" "Really." I dusted my shoulder. "It's a walk in the park." He grinned. "Well, in that case, let's up the ante." He pressed a button, and then an alarm blared. A moment later, the walls began to tremble, then slid inward. Now the room wasn't 20 by 20. It was 19 by 19. My captor smiled. "See you in another hour." Zombies are not scary. It's played out, right? Once you've killed millions of the undead in video games, or seen the never-ending hordes taken out in comedy horror movies, it just all kind of loses its magic. It has gotten to the point where even the idea of discussing a zombie survival plan receives an eye roll. especially since the proper plan is actually quite simple, right? Don't get bitten, keep your distance, create difficult to traverse terrain since they are too dumb to navigate it, build a wall, rebuild society. Zombies? Ha! More like boarsies. That's why I wasn't so worried when the news started talking about bodies rising all over the world. I figured I could handle this. Just break the heads like a melon and destroy the brains. Should make for a fun few weeks. I even hoped someone like my boss would get infected. Okay, so I was a little spooked when my neighbor's dead cat came back to life and waited outside her home for her to come out. Muffin clawed the skin from her right arm off. Gross. Fairly original twist to the formula, but not unheard of. Turns out the rule was that everything that dies becomes a zombie and tries to attack the living. Oh, and also, it can infect the living and cross species like some shitty form of rabies. I got turned fairly early on, at least a month or so in. Mosquito bite got me. It sucked. I was so itchy, and then dead. Barely even get to use my two-handed anime sword. I also shambled around an abandoned mineshaft for nearly a decade, trying to find some tasty living flesh to consume. Oh, and I was conscious all the while. I couldn't control my body, but my brain was active. The population of the living dwindled in the following 10 years. Billions to millions, to thousands, to the final stronghold of humanity, which of course fell as well. Turns out when everything that dies becomes one with the Z-Force, you sort of have unlimited sleeper agents. So, now here we are, a dead planet with nothing living. I've always wondered what would happen if all the living was gone during a zombie apocalypse. Would they evolve? Would they rot? Go vegan? Nope. It turns out we just wait. We legitimately stand still in an unending, never-resting, eternally conscious wait for more living flesh. For life to evolve once more after billions of years, only to be snuffed out before it can start. And then we wait some more, and some more, and more. Forever. So if I can TLDR this whole thing, to the living, zombies are not scary. But when you are turned, and your purpose to feed is done, and you can only wait for reality to end so you can be free, terrifying. He's my brother and I love him. He's my brother and I love him. He's my brother and I love him. That's what I repeat to myself over and over as I wait with Danny for the bus to come to take him to his school. He doesn't learn much there. His brain can't really hold on to much anymore, but it gives Mom a break from him for a bit. He is pretty high maintenance these days. We have to spoon feed him. Holding utensils, let alone having the coordination to convey food to his mouth with them, is beyond Danny's capacity now. He has to wear special protective mitts on his hands anyway, as well as soft booties to protect his feet. At least he can still shuffle along by himself. He is starting to smell bad, not just his diapers, but the progression, I guess, of his condition. Even keeping him cool as much as possible won't slow down flesh rotting forever. But he's my brother, and I love him. We used to joke about the zombie apocalypse and the world ending, but no one expected it to actually happen, nor for it to be like this. 2 strains of the necrotosis virus, the A strain being the typical horror movie zombie virus, and infecting maybe a few thousand people. Nothing world-ending, but it was terrifying. It took my dad. But the B strain, coming after, was much worse. That's what Danny has. It moves much more slowly, sending its victims into violent seizures while not quite killing them. But they are essentially brain dead, and with weakened organ function, they slowly die, rotting as they go. Mom could have just turned Danny over to the so-called hospice program the government offered, but they would have just incinerated him. That's standard procedure. We had all his teeth pulled once they started to decay. That way he can't bite. Not that he's violent. B-strain victims rarely are. And they have very occasional flashes of lucidity, which almost makes it worse. Like yesterday, when Danny gave me a lopsided drooly grin after I flew his kite for him. We'll have to turn him in eventually. He'll rot too much to even hold together. Plus, we don't know if he might turn violent later. This is the same disease as A-strain, just slower moving. Or maybe I'll just burn us all up together one night. Just set the house on fire while Mom's asleep. And, oh fuck. Here I'm daydreaming about this mess, and Danny has somehow managed to open up the bowl of raw hamburger. That's his lunch. Damn it. Raw hamburger all over his face. I just wipe him off and remind myself this time next year, Danny will be nothing but ashes. Me too, maybe. But for now, he's my brother. And I love him. I wish my zombie apocalypse was cliche. I've watched countless zombie apocalypse movies to the point that they don't faze me anymore. I've gotten used to the various cliches and tropes, such as the classic undead appearance of the infected, to the fact that zombies should either be extremely slow or extremely fast, no in-betweens. I can even predict who would get bitten and who's hiding a bite. That being said, having a zombie apocalypse in real life was not something I predicted. When my wife and I first heard the news, I was honestly terrified, not only because it was actually happening, but because there is no chaos to be seen. No footage of a zombie, no audio of a panic, just the text. Infectious zombie disease outbreak confirmed, details to follow. What's even worse is that it's happening in a city near us, and our 21-year-old son hasn't came back yet from his weekly window shopping at the mall. So imagine my relief hearing my son state that everything was fine where he is, and that he will return immediately after I called him about the news. My wife and I continued watching the TV, hoping to find out more about the outbreak, expecting to see details of a quarantine or of the government working on containing the infected. What we didn't expect, however, was an incredibly vague update. Tell me, how was I supposed to react when the news just shows the text, officials are advising citizens at home to keep distance between each person in the vicinity? We were starting to speculate what this could mean. If we are already barricaded in our own home, why should we keep distance away from each other? Wouldn't we see if someone had been bitten or is already a zombie? Is the virus transmitted through air or physical contact? Why is it called a zombie outbreak then? What if it was all merely a hoax? We start getting really paranoid each passing minute. Finally, after what seemed like hours, we see two news reporters on TV. Though they both are seated far apart and are intently observing each other. All the while eyeing each other, they reported that the virus is indeed spread through biting. However, the virus doesn't degrade the body or take over one's mind. The infected stays as a normal human, capable of talking and making decisions, just with the sole intent of efficiently biting as many people as possible. The virus has evolved to have a thinking, rational host who knows how to act and wait for the perfect time to strike. Finally, the reporters add, the outbreak has already been ongoing hours, even before the warning. The officials do not know the full scale of the outbreak. Keep safe, everyone, and keep your distance, even from family members and friends." Upon hearing this, my wife and I looked at each other, wide-eyed. Then, a knock on the door. "Mom? Dad? I'm here." It's not easy being a zombie. In this world today, it is not easy being a zombie. Trust me, I know. We're not like how the TV or movies make us out to be. Not at all. First, we're not mindless wandering eating machines. We have real feelings, you know. Sure, our brains no longer work, but we can still feel happiness or sadness. We have jobs, too, or at least some of us used to. When the virus first hit the masses, people started dropping like flies. But then they got back up. They weren't alive anymore, but they also weren't trying to eat other people's flesh either. We all kind of stood around not knowing what to do. Not alive anymore, but also not dead either. I got canned from my job soon after. Nobody wants a dead guy walking around and stinking up the office, right? But that's the thing. I didn't smell like rot or decay. I didn't have a heartbeat or breath at all anymore. I guess management didn't want to deal with all the complaints. But there are a few upsides to it as well. You don't have to eat or drink anymore. You can still take a shower, but it's not necessary. With not having a job, I can pursue other interests of my own. Hanging out with your undead friends means staying up all night. You don't need sleep anymore either. There have also been some setbacks. My friend Rick invited me over to his place, which happens to be in his mom's basement. She doesn't want anyone to see her undead son in the house during the day. Anyway, I get there, and Rick's skin is black and charred all over. I said, "What the hell happened?" Rick said it was some damn teenage punks who set him on fire when he snuck outside to take a walk. "Fucking humans," I said. "He had to jump in his swimming pool outside to put it out." I have my moments as well. The other day I went for a walk at the local park. Everyone kept staring and running away from me. I know I'm pale and lanky now, but I didn't remember till later that I still had a knife stuck in the side of my head. Someone's prank from the other night with the boys. Yeah, like I said before, it's not easy being a zombie these days. They don't make zombies like they used to. They don't make things like they used to. That phrase has always raised my ire every time someone said it. It's either coming from some old fart who can't stop reminiscing about the good old days, which from what I have read about, weren't so damn good in the first place, or some dumbass who breaks something because they don't know how to read instructions. Being in research and development, though, I really can say that they don't make things like they used to. They make them better than they used to, in fact. Appliances use less power, GMO plants grow faster and in more places, and vehicles are safer. Weapons, though, they have really come a long way. In the past 60 years alone, we have made great strides in maximizing destructive potential while minimizing risk to soldiers. The superiority of weaponry really showed through, though, during the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, aka the Undying Conflict. Whereas back in the good old days, anyone fighting would be at risk of being overrun by a horde of biting, clawing corpses, and most likely would end up joining the enemy's ranks. Now, though, armed forces of even the poorest nations are able to round up the dead with ease and put an end to them quickly and efficiently, with more threat coming from human error than weapons malfunctions. The first official zombie war in history ended only weeks after it begun. Perusing data from the war, I can only marvel at the genius of the human mind and the wonders that it can create. Sitting here in my government-funded weapons research lab, I put this together with info we gathered from the zombies themselves, what animates and motivates them, their strengths and their weaknesses. It's just a matter of time until we can improve potential. I lean over my workstation and speak into the microphone. Begin test round 43, segment 1. I watch a couple of soldiers wheel in a body on a cart with a burlap sack over its head, heavily sedated but still struggling as they secure it into place. Before leaving, they pull the burlap off of the test subject's head, revealing the matted hair and bloodshot eyes that all of them have. One of my associates walks in behind the test subject with a loaded syringe and a bolt gun to be used for a quick ending via brain trauma. Begin the routine, Mason. I lean back in my chair, listening to the pleading of the woman, begging for life and freedom, as Mason first injects her with a reanimation formula, then quiets her with a quick shot to the forehead from the bolt gun. Now we just wait to see if our adjustments to the formula have made any progress in fixing the weakness to brain damage that the undead have. With any luck, I'll be able to make an even better zombie for our great nation's next war. Halloween 2021. Project X. The pristine building, which sat on 50 acres of land with a touch of futuristic architecture, was nothing more than a testing site. The lake had flashes of glitter racing across it as the moving walkways shuttled residents, guests, and staff to several entertainment areas and the lake. The halls were filled with laughter as members of various age groups moved around the day room, playing games and reading magazines. Some were playing spades and rummy, while others read books and newspapers. The old hippies chilled at the lake, smoking marijuana cigarettes, dancing and drinking beer. Some hippies played grab-ass with their friends, while others enjoyed the cool breeze of the lake. As evening ended, dinner was served in the cafeteria with an assortment of desserts. Soon the utensils were striking the trays, and the chatter and commotion dispersed as the old folks headed to their quarters for the night. The break was welcomed by the night staff because the old people could be challenging. The nurses visited the old folks and administered medication to help them sleep, and some offered them alcohol. The patient alert buzzer sounded. Medical alert for Suite 34. Nurse Kaufman was alerted that there was a medical emergency by the CCTV operator. She ran to the suite and found Miss Dietrich in distress and covered in slime. Having been frozen by the patient's appearance, she pushed the panic button. Code blue, Suite 34, yelled Kaufman. I'm on the way, responded Dr. White. Miss Dietrich was confused, convulsing, and foaming at the mouth. Nurse Kaufman tried to restrain her. She was too strong. Dr. White was able to restrain her with straps, but then she started spitting out blood and bleeding from the eyes. This is not good, said the doctor. Contact the CDC, code outbreak. I got blood on me. I have to go to the contamination chamber. Go! I will make the call, said Dr. White. Alert the rest of the staff. The CCTV operator reported that the security cameras were offline. Screams echoed throughout the facility as Dr. White ran to the emergency station and called the CDC. The CDC administrator confirmed the outbreak code. The plague had fully taken grip of the facility. The old folks turned into flesh-eating zombies, consuming human flesh. CDC contacted the armed forces. CCTV was activated. 13 people gathered around an oval table in an unknown base, some of whom are military and government officials, public health agents, and scientists. They watched the onslaught on CCTV monitors. What are we doing? Asked one of the scientists. They are human beings, not lab rats. This is a necessary evil, said a government agent. "The new weapon of war. We don't want this virus to spread to the public," said the man from Public Health. "May God forgive us," said the general. "Destroy Project X." The order was given to destroy the facility. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.